Sleeping Beauty is a film that I don't often see come up when people list their top Disney movies, but it's always been one of my favorites. It's your prototypical fairy tale. The plot is very simple, and the characters aren't particularly complex. However, Sleeping Beauty has always stood out to me for its visuals. This is one of the most gorgeously animated films that's ever been made. It's an absolute feast for the eyes, and a masterpiece of animated filmmaking that, in my opinion, represents the Walt Disney Company's crowning achievement during the animation industry's formative years. Originally released in 1959, this film was developed over the course of almost a decade so as to perfectly hone in on its style. Like many others, I consider Sleeping Beauty to be the third entry in a sort of unofficial trilogy of Disney films along with Snow White and Cinderella. Each of these movies is a refinement on the same sort of concept. All three have similar types of subject matter, plot structure, and characters. Of these three films, however, Sleeping Beauty is by far my favorite one and the only one that I watch regularly. I consider this movie to be the ultimate fairy tale come to life. This film channels a lot of the same creative energy that made Fantasia so memorable back in 1940, with its sweeping, atmospheric storytelling set to classical music. In this case, the score was adapted from Tchaikovsky's Sleeping Beauty ballet.
This wonderful score, written more than 75 years ago by Peter Tchaikovsky, for his ballet version of the fairy tale.
However, unlike Fantasia, which is made up of several short, unrelated segments, this film gives you a cohesive narrative from start to finish. Walt Disney envisioned Sleeping Beauty as a moving tapestry, and oh boy did they accomplish that. This film takes a sort of medieval pre-Renaissance art style and filters it through the sensibilities of a modern Art Deco aesthetic with strong geometric shapes and angles. The result is breathtaking and really does quite resemble the look of a medieval tapestry in motion. There are so many slow, lingering shots that let you soak in the ambience. I try not to overuse the word epic when describing movies, but this one really deserves it. You could take virtually any frame of Sleeping Beauty, display it as its own art piece, and nobody would bat an eye. The third act barely has any dialogue. Neither Aurora nor Prince Philip, ostensibly the film's two leads, say a single word, mostly leaving it up to the visuals, music, and atmosphere to tell the story. Some parts towards the end honestly feel more like a horror movie than anything else. This scene here scared the piss out of me when I was a kid. I distinctly remember being afraid of spinning wheels for years. Of course, being a classic Disney feature, there's always still room for some fun. Aurora and Maleficent may be the most prominently featured characters in most of Sleeping Beauty's advertising, merchandising, etc., but the real main characters are the three good fairies, Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather. These three are hilarious, despite being the most active agents in the plot from start to finish, serving as the main guiding force for the leads, and the fact that they're in more of the movie than anyone else. I mean, come on, they practically walk Philip through the big climactic action scene at the end like he's in the tutorial section of a video game. Despite all that and everything else they do, they're sort of treated by the screenplay like comic relief sidekicks. It'd be like if in Lord of the Rings you replaced Gandalf's role in the plot with Merry and Pippin. The fairies have a great back and forth banter with a sort of Three Stooges dynamic, except that they're all sweet little old ladies. There's a lot of comedic gold to be mined from these three not having any idea how to do things without their magic, as well as the ongoing clash of blue versus pink.
It looks awful.
That's because it's on you, dear.
Meanwhile, the two kings, Stefan and Hubert, also have a really fun rapport. I especially love the scene where the two of them are arguing while their minstrel gets drunk in the background. That's not to undersell anyone else, these characters all function perfectly within the context of a classic fairy tale. In particular, the villain, Maleficent, is incredible. This character, despite being fairly one-note, has such a striking design and commanding screen presence.
Stand back, you fools!
Maleficent was voiced by Eleanor Audley, who had previously played the evil stepmother in Cinderella. Both characters' facial features were actually modeled after Audley, and she was also the one who physically performed as Maleficent in full costume for animation reference. Every other character was voiced and modeled by separate actors. This character is extremely intimidating. Every time she appears on screen, you're instantly afraid for the other characters. It's completely understandable why Maleficent has gone down as one of the most iconic Disney villains of all time.
Well, here's your
precious princess.
Unfortunately, where Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs had been Disney's inaugural feature film, and Cinderella had similarly ushered in their Silver Age following a series of compilation films released during World War II, Sleeping Beauty would be the final entry of the Silver Age, and the last of the studio's large-scale animated productions to be overseen by Walt personally during his lifetime. With its $6 million budget, Sleeping Beauty was the most expensive animated movie ever made up till that point. However, following a poor box office turnout which failed to make back its budget, and with Walt's main attentions having largely shifted to live action and the newly opened Disneyland, there was briefly talk within Disney of shutting down their animated film division for good. Of course, that didn't end up happening. However, Sleeping Beauty was the final Disney film produced before the studio infamously began using Xerox machines to duplicate animation cells in order to save on time and money. This cost-cutting technique may have been successful in keeping their animation division afloat for the next several decades, but it is undeniable that Disney's films would never look this great again, at least until their renaissance began 30 years later with The Little Mermaid.
I think it's the end of an era, the end of a kind of animation that we'll never see again.
If it's been a long time since you've seen this movie, or if you've only ever seen it in like a cropped VHS release or some other low-resolution format, I would highly, highly recommend checking out this movie in high definition on a big screen with a nice sound system. Sleeping Beauty was one of the first Disney classics to get a live-action pseudo-remake/retelling in the 2010s with Maleficent starring Angelina Jolie, the sequel to which is coming out today. Check back tomorrow to see my thoughts on that. And if you enjoyed this video, you'd be helping me out a lot if you could hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, and ring the bell to stay up to date on all of my latest stuff. Leave a comment down below with any of your thoughts on Sleeping Beauty, and check out some of the other great stuff I've got up here on my channel. As always, thanks so much to all of you guys for watching, and take care.
Watch out!